An Unconventional Threesome is a comedy podcast hosted by three rude, crude, and tattooed dudes. We tell you this so you can shield your children's eyes and cover their ears. If you don't, we're not responsible for the fun and exciting new words that they start using. Enjoy.
Welcome to the show, yeah, it's a blast. Turn the volume up, we got to laugh. Every joke's a hit, you'll have a fit. Sit back, relax, let's start this bit. Tuned in live from the internet's heart, where every word is a work of art. Comedy gold, it never gets old. Jump aboard, let the fun unfold.
Welcome to Breakfast with Bumblefucks, a conversation podcast that is hosted by three people who have no business having a podcast. My name is John, and I'm not even supposed to be here today.
Jay's here too.
And for three episodes in a row, we are once again joined by MK.
Everybody, I'm here for a good time. I still haven't figured out my intro.
Well, I think it goes without saying you are the sexy appeal when D is not with us. For anybody wondering, he's fine. Just going through some shit, I guess, for lack of a better term at this point in time.
Life gets in the way.
Unfortunately, it does. And it's the summertime. You might notice a distinct lack of enthusiasm during this episode because we are recording it on a Friday morning, whereas we normally record on Thursday nights after I've had some caffeine and adult beverages. But we're going to get through it. But you're coming along with us through this insufferable ride that we call an unconventional threesome.
We're also recording on July 4th.
Yippee!
Captain Freedom making a comeback.
If that matters, yeah.
To make this even more insufferable, I want to open up with some dumb jokes.
Ooh, I've got one too. I hope you don't steal it. Go for it, sir.
Perfect. What do you call a man with an opinion?
Right.
A man.
Wrong. Why do so few men end up in heaven? They never stop to ask for directions.
That's so true.
Why are most dumb blonde jokes one-liners?
Because they couldn't understand more than one line.
So men can understand them. Jay, what's yours?
Why are there no knock-knock jokes about America?
Because America doesn't knock.
Because freedom rings.
Rings.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
All right, we do have some user-submitted questions this week. First one I felt was going to be fitting for this episode, although we don't have as much variety because, as you can probably ascertain and imagine, my wife and I live in the same house. So it's now down from 3 opinions to 2 on this subject. But how do you deal with a shitty neighbor?
You don't talk to them.
Yeah. It's situational for me. It depends. I'm lucky that I live out in the sticks now, but I did live in a new construction subdivision with a bunch of yuppies about 7 years ago. We were there for a few years, and it was a weird phenomenon. So we were one of the first ones there. And as it turned out, every new neighbor that moved in was shittier than the last. The first few we had on our little leg of the street were really great. And we actually still stay in touch. Everything was fine. For whatever reason, we were just like-minded. Most of us, wave at each other at the mailbox, shoot the breeze a little bit and then leave each other the hell alone. Otherwise, the neighborhood started getting a little more, we wish we were an HOA, but we're not, as it continued. There's probably 4 streets on it. There's probably about 80 houses by the time it was done. And we just ignored everybody. We didn't have, luckily our abutters were great, but we had one neighbor a few houses down who I think their kid's probably a serial killer by now because he would just be creepy. Um, like he would look at you and be like, "Hey, you're walking your dog again. That's the third time today." And just like stare at you and spit facts about things he's observed. And it was very, very odd. We had another one that was in everyone's business. We had another one that tried to like set up, it was probably for good intentions, but like block party type things. Only they were really, really, really pushy about participation. So my wife has a reputation for not existing. I actually had one of those neighbors try to do a welfare check on her once because she used to pull into the driveway, go into the garage, shut the garage door, go in the house. So no one ever saw her ever. And I literally had one of those neighbors show up and say, I need to see your wife. And they don't
Huh.
know her. She's on the couch like, who the fuck's at the door? Shoot them. I'm like, huh, that's a little aggressive. Yeah, fuck that. Why are they knocking? I don't know. We've already established freedom rings, but either way. So mostly it was just ignoring them. I never really had an issue in a house where it got to a point that I really needed to address it. In my apartment days, I had one that it was a good thing we were ready to move. Just too much noise, too much disrespect, no abiding by the rules. And I was getting creative on that one, which is probably not my proudest moment. But anyway, the first avoidance maneuver is what I generally do.
Yeah, and I would say MK and I are very lucky that we really, in most of our times living together, we've never really run into a lot of issues. I know when we moved into our current house, we live out in the sticks as well, but one of our abutting neighbors is, kind of almost right on top of us. And we were first moving in, I'm like having a panic attack about it. Like, oh my God, I'm gonna have, if they're a shitty neighbor, I'm gonna have to build a fence. I'm gonna have to build the wall. But very fortunate that they were actually awesome neighbors and we're very lucky. The closest thing to a shitty neighbor I can even think that we've encountered is when we lived in an apartment together right before we moved into this house. Um, it was a mother and son that lived together, and I honestly kind of enjoyed the Friday night fights. MK would come home from work and I would literally be at one of the doors with my ear pressed against it to hear what kind of bullshit they were fighting about, because I'm a nosy little shit.
You'd be making popcorn and it would be a whole thing.
It was entertainment for me just to listen to these people's like lives fall apart, apparently. So I guess that's the closest I've ever come to having a shitty neighbor, and it was just operation avoidance as much as I could. In this particular apartment complex, there were like enclosed three-season porches in front of our front doors, and they allowed smoking out there, which was not stellar. I mean, yeah, I was a smoker at the time, but I also didn't smoke in the house. I didn't smoke on the porch. I didn't, I pretty much just smoked in my car or whatever. But this neighbor would sit on that porch and pretty much just smoke a pack a day. So it would just turn into my apartment kind of smells like cigarettes because my neighbor's smoking out here.
And that resulted in us not using the porch because
Right.
Yeah.
neighbor was out there all the time.
As I recall, she was a real handsome lady too.
Jay, were you there for the interaction that we had with her the day you helped me move out of there?
Um,
Where she was sitting on the porch ranting and raving about how the doctor cut her off from her opioid prescription.
I didn't hear the highlights, but she was overly friendly and wanting to be. It's like she was yearning to be included, but didn't want to
Yeah.
do any work. Yeah. Yeah, I wish I took a page out of your book because when I was in the apartment, we had downstairs neighbors that all they would do is fuck really loud to the point that to get their attention, my wife would sometimes drop a kettlebell from 2 feet in the air onto the floor to get them to
Nice.
stop. Um, and knowing what the floor plan was, they were banging on the couch. because it was right under our couch. We're like, "Oh, dear God." And then the noisy ones upstairs, that one sucked because it was a grandmother whose children were obviously failing at life, because they were in between homes. So, well, I mean, maybe not failing. Maybe they were just trying to, like, wait for a house to be built or something. I don't know what the issue was. All I know is the guy put bed and breakfast on his door trying to be cute, and then 3 months later, these fuckos were still there with their 2 children. And
Jesus.
we were sharing an elevator ride once because these kids would run up and down the hall. They would jump off the couch, like power bomb each other into the living room floor. So we're all in the elevator once together. I said, "Who's winning?" And they're like, "What?" And I'm looking at, the parents. I said, "Who? Tell me who's winning. Your kids sound like they're reenacting fucking UFC down there." And rather than being adult and apologizing, they said, "Well, kids, who's winning?" And they just decided to be shitty about it. And I went to the office to complain, and they told me they couldn't do anything. I said, "So I've got silverback gorillas with cocaine and bowling balls living above me, and there's not a fucking thing you can do." "Well, we can tell them something." I said, "Never mind, I'll take care of it." "Well, we don't want you to do that." "I guess you better do it."
That's where it gets to the weird line of people just being shitty people, but not breaking any rules. Because if they're not breaking things in the apartment, they're just loud in general. And during, not quiet hours, so it's not like 3 o'clock in the fucking morning and they're doing it. Yeah, it sucks, but they're not breaking any rules. So that's where it gets to a weird spot for management companies as well, because they're not doing anything wrong by the book. They're just fucking assholes.
Yeah.
I thought that was gonna be that the grandma upstairs like had a cane, and so that's all you heard was like a cane or went a way different direction.
Well, I took the old man route. I suggested to the office that I had a lawn chair and a racquetball and a lot of PTO, and I was just gonna sit outside their door and throw the fucking racquetball against their wall all hours of the night because apparently everyone can make noise and that's totally cool.
Right.
And instead, they actually wound up moving out a month before we did. It was like, "Motherfucker, I only get a month of silence out of this." I mean, they were nice enough people though. That was the weird thing because I had dealt with them all individually before I put everything together,
Mhm.
and they were working, they were doing their thing. Everyone was kind at baseline. They just shouldn't be cohabitating with other humans.
Gotcha. I agree with everything you said. We're lucky to be, where we are with such awesome neighbors, and the apartment neighbor, mother and son were the only bad neighbors that I had like before or growing up or anything.
Yeah, I mean, even from my childhood, there were some sketchy people that we dealt with. That because there was one house next to us that was just, it was almost like a friggin' motel. People were moving in and out of there so fucking much. Um, but one perspective that I think this question asker was looking for me to, or looking for us to get into, if there's a neighbor like specifically fucking with you. So calling CPS on you and your kids just to fuck with you. Just complete and utter mental games.
Right.
I know involving any sort of government entity, when the accusation is false, should be punishable by some sort of fine and or um customer service is the only thing coming to mind. Community service. It started with a C. I'm on it. Like I said, it is 9 a.m.
Well, so to answer that question a little more poignantly, I'm a person who doesn't mind throwing money at problems. So that would be a call to my attorney, and a
Yep.
demand
Yeah.
letter would be sent. And I'd go that way.
Record everything, get a professional on your side.
Yeah, the overwhelming force escalation where it's like, "Hi, I'm not going to deal with you." So, few $100 to an attorney, police complaints, whatever, and then, the Second Amendment's a thing. Lock your doors.
Well, I'm very much an avoidance type person, kind of going with what my parents always taught me growing up, just ignore them. If as soon as you start posting the stuff on Facebook and retaliating and, bringing this to the public eye, yeah, a normal person would look at those and be like, "Oh, I'm a shitty person," but obviously this person has some sort of ill intent in their heart and some
Yeah.
level of probably mental issues. So you're only potentially feeding into the fire.
Right.
Well, don't
Um,
underestimate silence either then, because I
Yes.
know
exactly.
that's a really good weapon. So complete non-reactive, just stoicism, maybe it would put the fire out.
Yeah, make it clear that it's not bothering you, and,
Even
like I
though it
said,
is.
well, even though it might be in the background, but at least on from the outside, let it be clear that it's not bothering you and you're not gonna give in to the temptation, and write everything down. Write everything down to so if you have a case, you can make your case.
So one more suggestion, and I'm going to preface this with a disclaimer: an unconventional threesome and affiliates are not responsible for your actions. I know somebody very well who has a shrimp defense, is what we'll call it. And what she would advocate for is going to buy a bunch of raw shrimp and putting them in ducts and outlets and in furniture, because it'll be concealed, it'll be very hard to find, and it will smell like death, especially during the summer. So within a couple of weeks, they're going to wish like hell they weren't there anymore. And you have no idea how that happened.
The potential issue I see with that, and my recommendation is if you go that route, definitely wear gloves, but I am not condoning it. Um, the issue I see with that route is this person is not going to be seeking out what the cause of this heinous aroma is. They're just going to call management or the apartment complex and be like, something stinks in my apartment. And now some poor maintenance guy has to go seek it out.
Unless it's their own house.
Right.
Well, and the maintenance guy only has to seek it out and deal with it, and that takes a couple of hours, maybe. While that's happening, the offending resident's life is an upheaval, and you get that petty satisfaction. Unconventional threesome is not responsible for any human adult's actions or thoughts
Or decisions.
or decisions.
Yeah, I'm good with that. Should be a fairly easy one. I think I probably know everybody's answer to this one. Do you fold your pizza to eat it? Have we talked about this before? I know we've talked about pizza because I remember we talked about Chicago style pizza, but did we talk about if we fold our pizza to eat it?
I don't think we mentioned the fold. Based on structural integrity, if it's necessary, it's a reflex action for me. Yes.
I fold mine strictly because I can shovel more food into my face at the same time. I have taken a now 2-inch wide slice of pizza and condensed it down to one and doubled the layers.
So instead of width, you're getting height.
Correct. But not so fucking high like these goddamn chalupa delupa goddamn burger, the crazy burgers that you can't fit your face around.
No, yeah, I don't fold pizza. I eat it very specifically. I take off the crust and eat that first, and then I eat all the good, cheesy topping parts of the pizza.
And a four-tonged fork, because a three is a trident, is placed in your left hand the same way you would hold a pencil, and the knife is at a 91-degree angle as you draw towards yourself. Correct?
No, not that specific. I do not use a Satan's tine to to eat my pizza.
Well, and potentially psychopath status here, but I did try at one point taking the crust off the pizza, putting it in the middle of the actual pizza itself, and then
Oh, Jesus.
folding the pizza
Incredible.
around the crust. So there's no, in a lot of people's minds, I actually enjoy the crust, but there's no shitty crust bites. It's all pizza.
So a crust hot dog.
Yeah.
You just turn pizza into a sandwich by some definitions.
It's basically a pizza taquito.
It's a pizza bun with a crust hot dog.
Wow.
Like you said, I think it's all based on structural integrity. The last time I went to Chuck E. Cheese with children related to me, I need to make that very specific.
Thank
I
you
don't
for
just visit
specifying.
Chuck E. Cheese on a regular basis. But
Solo adult.
they cut their slices at the crust at like an inch and a half. So these things are just flopping all around. So, but there's also really no way to fold that shit. So you basically roll it up like a crescent roll and eat it like that. Uh, I remember I was with my brother and actually I think it was both my brothers and their kids, and me and my middle brother tried to see how many slices we could stack on top of each other and still fit our mouths around it. As you can imagine, we're not small people.
So what was the number?
I think it was 7 or 8. I don't remember though. It was a while ago.
Decent.
Respectable. I mean, from a competitive eating standpoint, shameful from any other standpoint.
Right. From an experiment standpoint.
I think this is a good spot for an ad break. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor.
Woo.
Funny stories late at night. Every episode is a treat. Get ready for something sweet.
Hello, mister. I'm looking for a record. Can you help me?
Well, of course I can help you, son. We got everything here at the other guy's record store. What you looking for?
I'm looking for an OG sealed copy of Black Sabbath's Technical Ecstasy.
Well, shit, son, I ain't got that, but you know who might? Russ and Jody over at the Night Owl 607 on Whatnot. Last I checked, he had a copy of that and hundreds of other records. He mostly deals in metal, but if you're into Taylor Swift or whatever the kids like to listen to these days, he's probably got that too.
That sounds amazing, mister, but how do I find his shows?
Easy as pie. Download the Whatnot app, make yourself an account, and in the search bar, look for at the Night Owl 607, no spaces or underscores. He usually streams around 6 p.m. Eastern Time, Tuesday to Friday. But the best part is, you don't even have to buy anything, but he sure as hell appreciates it when you do. You can just drop by and talk music, shoot the shit, or whatever. He's also on Instagram, where you can see the latest releases and things coming to his store at the same name, at the Night Owl 607. Again, no spaces.
Will do, mister. Thank you.
And we are back. Thank you, the Night Owl 607, for your sponsorship of this podcast. Question here that I think this particular group is probably the best to discuss this topic. Public school v. private school v. homeschool. Which is your preference and why? My perspective, and has always been this perspective, public school. Reason behind it is A, you get some sort of social interaction. Yes, that comes with negative aspects of it. If your kid ends up in a shitty clique or whatever, they turn into a shitty human being, but you're raising kids right, you don't have to worry about it. The socialization aspect of it, I think, is huge for public school. The relationships you build within not only the school, but the community. And you already pay for it in your taxes. Why not fucking use it?
So for me, it's based on what goal you're looking for. I would never say public. The default is private, depending on what you want to do, but homeschool could work too. So, for example, if you're not looking for higher education down the road, if you're not looking for like a broad base of things, I don't think you could beat having a stay-at-home parent who's not, that word I'm not allowed to use, helping you through everything and teaching you all kinds of stuff. Think about all the stuff your parents would have taught you if they had more time. So that's that. But as far as from a basic education standpoint, it's mathematically superior for private. And the reason I say that, and I won't go on too much of a diatribe because this will be a freaking 2-hour episode. By the way, I'm a public school guy myself, but from a private standpoint, if you look at classroom size and then the people you're going to have in the classroom. I remember being in public school, and there's 35 kids in the class. And of those 35, 5 are really smart, 20 are in the middle, and the remainder are either disruptive or troublemakers, or you can't say words like granola without them jumping out the damn window. So if you look at the amount of time you have and the amount of student to teacher interaction you have, it's less. And the teacher can only teach to the um, pretty much the dumbest student most of the time. Whereas in private school, if you've got everyone who's in public school would have been a B or better student, and there's only 12 of them rather than 36, then you've got a better ratio. You generally have longer class times. You generally are able to give more homework, and you're able to teach to a higher level. So if you look at the actual um, curriculum and what you leave with, private school is better. And the only reason I say that from a mathematics standpoint is I've known a few people that have gone to private school, and the stuff you learn in a state college in your sophomore year is the crap they were doing in their junior year of high school.
Yeah, I guess it comes down to at what point are you using the private school versus public school versus homeschool? Because I know plenty of people that went to a private like grade school. They didn't
Yeah.
join the public school system until high school, so
I would
9th,
have
10th,
gone the other
11th,
way.
and 12th.
Yeah.
Exactly, because they still turned out to be drug pushers and stupid as the day is long. So it didn't make a fucking difference that their parents paid buku bucks for them to play with Legos in a way more expensive building.
And that's a good point too, John, because I've known people who graduated from private school that we nicknamed giggles and push brooms around big box retail stores. And that's fine. At
Not
least
that there's anything wrong with that.
that's fine. I'm glad they're not stabbing anyone. Life is good.
Right.
But there's no guarantee. So the only metric I could use is who's going to have better academic education. The outcome beyond that, as you and I can attest, working in similar fields for upwards of a decade, I've got people sitting right next to me that barely got out of high school, and I've got people next to me that have more degrees than a thermometer, same freaking
Right.
job. So
Well, I remember when we were doing the interviews, and MK is probably going to have to stop us from talking at some point to weigh in on this topic, because I remember when we were interviewing people for incoming positions, and there was a guy there that was like a fucking neurosurgeon
yeah,
applying to a job I don't think even required a college degree.
no,
I
it
think it
didn't.
was preferred, but not necessary.
And then there was the guy that D turned away. That was hilarious. Guy came in for a completely separate interview, and D was like, "Yeah, this is the position," and interviewed him. The guy was confused, didn't like him, turned him away, goes, "He's a freaking no." And it turns out he was interviewing for a position like 4 levels above us.
Whoops.
That was freaking hysterical. MK, did you have any thoughts before we run out of tape here?
Yeah. Well, so I was homeschooled. I went to preschool in my community, but that was it. I was home aside from that, and I even took like I went to the town college for a couple of. I was in my senior year of high school for a couple of classes because our town had this nice little program where you could take college in high school for a really discounted rate. But that's the extent. Oh yeah, I also shadowed one day in public school, which was kind of fun, but I was too weird and I messed it up at the time.
What was the reason for the homeschooling, MK? Was there a
So
reason for doing it?
it was my father's idea. And after my mother and father divorced, my mother decided that it was a good idea. And I think it was because in our towns, the school systems, at least in the high school particular levels, like weren't stellar. And they had very specific views that they did not want, quote unquote, indoctrinated into my little skull as a child. And the fact that, like, you have a lot of control in homeschool on what to teach and like, okay, maybe you're not so interested in science, and so you're not going to go down a sciencey path. Well, we'll only spend 30 minutes a day focusing on science. We'll still get you enough to obviously make sure you have a well-rounded education. But if you're better at math and writing, like, let's spend more time on those subjects, so you can, especially as you get older, really, get a more what's the word, get more time into those areas where you're going to probably excel at and use more in your life, and you get all of
Specialized.
specialized, yeah, I guess, and you get all of the home education on top of that, whereas you're not going to get that in public school, where you're going to do budgets and you're going to write checks out because your furnace bill is due, and do laundry and like learn all those little things, which I guess you can do on the weekends, obviously, if you're going to public school. But I will say, if I had children, my preference would be homeschool, but it only works if your parent is basically committed to being a teacher full time. It's not going to work if your parent is off doing other stuff and leaving you to your own devices 100% of the time. You can maybe do that every once in a while, like, set it up so the structure at home and be like, okay, today I have to like work on a Friday somewhere, okay, you leave your kids to do their subjects like you've taught them and all that kind of stuff. But I've seen a big range, because I was in a lot of homeschool groups of kids where, some of them had very diligent parents and some of them did not. And so it doesn't really work out in the times that you do not have a diligent parent being the teacher.
So you liked it. It was a good experience for you. You wouldn't have traded it.
Correct. And because we had so many other outlets for socialization, whether it was sports or, like I said, the homeschool groups, we had like 4-H and all this other stuff. It was really a well-rounded education for me. We had field trips. We went to the science museum. We went to all kinds of places that we just like, oh, we decided today is going to be a field trip day. And we're able to do things our way that fit our schedule. And we never had homework.
Yeah, everything was homework.
Yeah. you got, you literally got done at 3 or 4 o'clock in the day, and that was it. You could spend your time on other things.
Well, I want to bring up a point that you made where, and I don't know what age you were when you did the, shadowing in a public school system, but you said it yourself that you messed it up because you were weird. Even with all these social outlets that you had, the homeschool kid is still weird.
I was weird because I didn't want anybody to know my real identity.
Secret agent man.
I was only going to be there for a day. I don't know. I was very weird about people knowing my name, apparently, in a big setting. Like, you're like he's talking about like 36 kids plus a teacher. I'm like, ooh, this is a lot of people. But yeah.
So did you shadow in the local community? Like the same school I went to?
No, it was
Okay.
where my father lived at the time.
Gotcha. Yeah, I don't know. The socialization aspect is huge for me because that not only teaches you socialization skills, but how to deal with difficult situations. But at the same time, MK is like one of the most well-rounded individuals when it comes to emotions, and she doesn't, stray too much off a baseline, which I would kill to be that fucking centralized in my life. So I mean, maybe my thought process on that is wrong, but I wouldn't give my public school education. I wouldn't do it differently because I feel like I got the most out of it. But I do remember there was a private school nearby our public school, and going back to what I was saying about we pay taxes for these schools, why not fucking use them? So there were a few kids trying out for the baseball team that went to the private school, and I remember it was this huge fucking deal. And basically the school board and the district said that, they can try out for the baseball team here because they pay taxes for it. And I remember I was pissed because one of those kids actually got the spot above me on the team. And I was obviously pissy about it. And, if you don't have enough pride to utilize the school system, why the fuck do you suddenly have enough pride to play for their baseball team? Why can't your little weirdo private school have their own goddamn stickball team?
Do they have enough people to make their own team? Well, here's the other thing, like, obviously, that's not something we could have done at homeschool, right? Like, we had myself and my sister, we can't do any kind of sports. We were swimmers, we didn't own a pool.
You could have been tennis prodigy. There was 2 of you.
But yeah, you know, I think we would have been allowed to join the swim team in the town because we paid taxes in the town. We never did,
Correct.
but yeah. Well, and here's the other thing I wanna say before we move off this topic is I feel like there's a lot of pressure in probably both private and public school, maybe less so in private because if you've got, like, uniforms or, you know, it's probably more strict in some private schools, but, like, I woke up and, like, I didn't care what anybody was gonna think of me that day because it was just my mother, my sister, and me.
I mean, it took us all 30 years to get there, but I don't think any of us care what anyone thinks of us anymore either.
True.
Right.
You just got there first.
I guess so.
Yeah, I remember when MK and I were first tossing around the idea of having children, which we do not have and are not now planning to have. What do we do? Because I am very much a huge proponent behind public schools. She's very much a huge proponent behind homeschool. I'm like, all right, do we compromise and send him to private school? Do we just hope to have twins, send one to public school and one to homeschool and see which one's more successful, make it a competition?
Nope.
That would make a fantastic movie 20 years later, but the death scene when they just Lizzie Borden both of you, I don't know. That would be rough.
I'm pretty sure TLC would probably pick that up as a TV series.
Oh yeah, easily.
Or what, the We Network? What is that? The Women's Entertainment? BET wouldn't.
Hallmark if it went the other way.
Maybe MTV, because I don't think they do anything with music anymore. But yeah, that was always a huge sticking point for us surrounding having kids too, and that's obviously wasn't the only reason we're not having kids, but that was always point of contention between us.
John, it's funny you mentioned that. So my father had to go to a private Catholic school from the time the umbilical cord was cut until he graduated high school, and his sister didn't have to. So his sister got to go to the local public school and not have to take a bus an extra hour in each direction, had one set of friends, etc. Yeah, I don't know exactly how that worked out mentally between the two of them. Yeah, I think there was some animosity there for a while.
That's strange.
Maybe it was just a me thing because I'm a relatively friendly human being, even though I'm a bit of an asshole. Going back to what you were saying about your aunt being able to have like one group of friends. Like I didn't have one group of friends. I didn't fall in any clique. I was friends with almost, at least a few people from every clique in that high school. Yeah, I mean, there were bullies. I got bullied a lot. And that's why I am the way I am today, just kind of a fucking asshole because I got bullied my entire life. So now that I'm, older, I'm going to bully everybody else around me.
Like, did you go to school in Iceland where everyone looked like the frickin' mountain from Game of Thrones? How did anyone bully you? I would be terrified to see the gigantic monster human that could have physically intimidated you.
It was usually the mental warfare. Yeah, I'm a big dude, but I was also fat. So you're always gonna pick on the fat kid. I remember there was I'm trying to remember if I was in 6th or 7th grade, but I fucked my wrist up pretty good where I was in a cast for like, I don't know, 3 to 6 months. I don't even remember at this point, but I was literally in fights almost daily because now I had a weapon attached to my arm. Yeah, probably wasn't great for the healing process and explains why I was in it for 3 to 6 months. But yeah, I would fight daily. I got a scar underneath my right eye because I wore glasses, and a kid punched me in the face, and my glasses sliced my eye open.
Kids can be mean sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. But I also
Yeah.
learned one of the greatest jokes of all time. What's the capital of Thailand? Bangkok, as you punch him in the nuts. I remember exactly where I was standing on the playground for that one. Oh
Oof.
boy.
Yeah, and kudos to anybody who's a teacher because you're also trying to be half parent, like full-time teacher in your position. It's a lot, especially when you're talking about class sizes of 30 or more students. That's pretty ridiculous in my opinion.
Unless you're trying to indoctrinate everybody, then shut up and stick to the syllabus.
I got a good friend that's a para, and the fucking nightmares that I hear about from her, where this kid has, clear mental disabilities and is unable, I believe it's on the autism spectrum. And I'm not shaming him in any way, shape, or form. He can't control himself. It's just a imbalance, chemical imbalance. I think. I'm not a doctor. But anyways, so they try and do something, try and figure out a game plan for this poor kid, and the parents are just completely and utterly absent from anything to do with this equation. And if he has a shitty day and starts beating the piss out of somebody, the parents don't fucking respond in any way, shape, or form. So is it a matter of like they've given up, or are they just shitty human beings? And this is why I think people should have to have a test in order to have kids.
Absolutely. At least one test.
I mean, we have to do it to drive, right? Like,
And no grading on the curve either. You either pass or you fail.
There was a college course that I passed because the fucking teacher was so fucking bad. He wanted nothing to do with being there. I think every single one of us failed midterms, tests, finals, everything. But somehow I managed to pass the class with like a B plus or something crazy like that. I'm like, you, sir, went back and looked at all the fails and just gave everybody like an additional 40 points just so you didn't look like a shitty teacher.
yeah, and so like when you get into systemized situations like that, how often is that being done at the grade school and high school level, just so that they're protecting their position or, what have you.
But I also understand that there is a time and a place for grading on a curve in such a way that if everybody is failing a certain section of whatever subject you're in, so I'm trying to think of an example and I can't. But if everybody isn't grasping one specific spot of whatever you're being tested on, all right, eliminate that question from the test, which is technically grading on a curve. But go back to it and start to try and figure out where the disconnect is. And I'm not telling people, not telling teachers how to do their job. They're, saints as far as I'm concerned, because they take one of these shittiest jobs and do it with a smile, most of them. But as long as it's being addressed where the disconnect is, I think grading on a curve is perfectly fine. Unlike this college professor where he's just like, fuck it, I really don't want to have to teach remedial math again. And they all get to pass.
That's another good point in favor of public school. Because on the one hand, you've got a scenario where the argument could be made that that situation's really disruptive and it's taking away from other people's education. But then you've got the other piece, which is we're in a society, all kinds of people exist, all kinds of challenges are going to come up, and you don't see that if you're in a private school. So it's kind of like from a social, not just friendly standpoint, just like this is life and we have to deal with things. That's a good one there too.
Wow, I think we actually turned Jay around on an opinion.
Oh, hell no. If my fictitious children are going to the whatever academy makes the most sense.
Let's get into this week's Would You Rather question. I think we've pretty well exhausted everybody's mental capacity for us debating school systems.
Yeah, we literally went to summer school. Thanks, John.
Would you rather fight a chicken every time you got into your car or fight a Rottweiler once a year?
Chicken. I would put my car in my wife's name so it's not my car anymore.
But on concept, it's still your car because you're, not exclusively the one that drives it, but predominantly the one that drives it.
Still chicken. I would rather fight two chickens every time I get into my car.
That was my original thought too, but MK came home and she was taking care of her mother's chickens, and the fucking rooster was attacking her, and she, through the pants, was able to shred her.
Or at least puncture me. But yeah, I would rather fight a chicken every day because you don't really fight a chicken. It's kind of just like they get it out and then they're done. But you can step on a chicken really easily. You can't step on a Rottweiler. That Rottweiler is going to do some damage.
How are you going to fight? How are you going to step on a chicken in your car?
Wait, is the chicken in the car?
Yes.
Oh, I thought you had to fight it to get into your car.
No, it's in the car with you. And I find it ironic that the two people that exclusively work at home and don't have to get into their cars very often are the ones that want to fight a chicken in their car.
I would fight three every time, and let me tell you why. How many police departments internationally do you see have assault chickens on their SWAT team? None.
Yeah.
You don't usually see Rottweilers on the team either, but
No, but you never see a chicken with an apprehension bite on their record.
And you know what? The hens aren't going to fight you. They're going to like peck you to see if you're food or if you have food, and then they're going to leave you alone. So if we're talking about like a chicken could be a rooster or a hen, I would take the chicken.
And you can snap a chicken's neck and then have lovely dinner later, and you're fine. Like that
Or just
actually
open the window and let them out.
for me, that negates going to the grocery store because I'm generally going to go buy a chicken. So I can just get into my car, snap a couple of necks, go back in the house, do some plucking, and we're good to go.
There you go.
so my brother is currently out in Dutch country, Pennsylvania, and they're right next to an Amish farm. And they had a sign out front advertising fresh chicken. And so they went to go buy some fresh chicken. And the woman, like checking them out, for lack of a better term, said, "Okay, give us a few minutes. It's still out back." So I don't know if they killed it yet or if they went out and killed chickens based on orders that day.
That's fantastic. It doesn't get any better.
It doesn't get any fresher. So what's your answer?
Mine?
Are you going to fight that Rottweiler?
No, because I like dogs and cats and all that way more than I like fucking chickens. But it doesn't say you have to kill it either. You gotta fight it. So the question then becomes, am I fighting to the death? If I'm fighting to the death, I'll fight a chicken every single fucking time because I don't think I have it in my heart to kill a dog on purpose, even if it's trying to kill me.
So let me put it to you this way, John. For that particular breed, I have family that has had them for decades. And if you fight one of you isn't walking away.
Yes.
Because we're not talking about a golden retriever that gets smacked in the ass and then shows you its vitals and says, we're cool, I'm sorry. We're talking about one that is going to eat you.
And as an owner of a pit bull, I mean, genetically she's a pit bull, but demeanor wise, she's a fucking chihuahua, minus the ankle biting. If she actually physically wanted to come after me, yeah, I'd probably be in some trouble. Yeah, my answer's probably chicken anyways, but
Are they organic chickens, though?
but I also get into my car anywhere between 2 to 10 times a day. So I got to do that every fucking time I get into my car. So it becomes an inconvenience at that point.
Think of how good you would be at dispatching a if you had that much practice.
Yeah, at the end of the week, no shit.
And I don't know if they're organic or not. He did not specify. Does it matter? It only matters for eating, right?
Right. And then another question, are there weapons involved? My answer would still be the same, but if I can just smack a chicken, that's even easier.
I mean, if you're quick enough to grab it, you could just hold it by the neck and then just, like I said, throw it out the window. It's not really that big of a fight, especially in the car. Like, I'm trying to think of how this would, because at least on the ground, they can jump up at you. But in the car, there's not much they can do.
I mean, they can flap around and wing you a bunch, and they'll, your car is now covered in feathers because it's not like once this chicken is dead, all of the mess goes away. So that's something else to consider too. So if you bring weapons into it, now you're gonna have to clean up a bunch of chicken blood out of your leather.
I'm just glad this is a hypothetical and we don't have to actually deal with it.
I was gonna say, if we were gonna Mythbuster this shit, we have to find a Rottweiler and a chicken, and one of us willing to actually throw down.
3 to 4 times a day. I think that's enough of this. It's now pushing into the afternoon, so I got shit to do.
Pushing it in the afternoon.
Thank you all for listening. We certainly appreciate you guys joining us. If you haven't already, like and subscribe on whatever platform you listen to us on. You also have the ability to submit questions to us through the email and or our Facebook page. At the top of the episode description, there is also a link on most platforms that says send us a link, which allows you to just click that and send us a quick text, and we all get it. Did I forget anything? I'm off script now.
You need to say the email.
Yeah, the email an unconventional threesome at gmail.com.
Great. And go out and have some crazy conversations, everybody.
Yeah, talk to each other. That's the only way you get to have these wet and wild conversations. Yes, absolutely. Please send in your requests.
And thank you for our inaugural sponsor.
Yes, thank you again to Russ at the Night Owl 607. As you heard in the advertisement, seller on Whatnot, which is a horribly addicting app. So if you got addiction problems, don't download it. If you can know how to control yourself, go ahead and download that Whatnot app. Give them a follow on there. We would greatly appreciate it. You guys ready for the Craigslist catastrophe this episode?
Let's light this candle.
Woo!
This one's another one out of Wanna Lancet under Missed Connection. I want to drive that point home. This is under Missed Connection. Titled, Does It Pay to Be an Early Bird? Early bird with an empty nest seems to miss the worm all the time. Am I getting up late?
What?
This is John.
Yeah, Jay's here too.
This is MK.
See you guys in 2 weeks. Fuck the government.
This podcast will make you proud. Podcast party time, grab a seat. Every listen feels so sweet.